Welcome to Six Tackles for another week. I'm Danica Mason. Matthew Thompson, he's still covering the Olympics. Hasn't the Olympics been fun, Gus? Have you been watching much of it?
Danica Mason, how you doing?
I'm good.
The Olympics have been great, yes.
Well, you barely sleep, so you'd be tuning in
right
all
in
hours.
right in my time slot.
What time have you been watching it till?
Till when it's over. Yeah, till when the replay starts.
Yeah, right, okay. So you've been...
Yeah, I like to watch it live. Yeah.
What's your favourite Olympic sport?
I like them all. I love the athletics. I think the athletics will be great next week. The swimming, obviously, has been brilliant. But I like them all. I become an expert on equestrian and weightlifting and everything every 4 years.
Yeah. Are you an armchair critic?
No, I just marvel at them. I looked up on Stan. I mean, you can virtually watch anything whenever you want to watch it.
You can,
It's incredible. Like there's 100 different ways to watch it.
You can choose whatever sport you want, whatever time, and watch it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for. I love the Olympics, but I think I have to say I love the Winter Olympics. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be in Italy. Already put my hand up. Hopefully I can go over. Maybe
don't know whether we can trust you on a tour, Danica.
We'll get a sense of it when we go to Vegas next year.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've got another person coming in, to this trip to Vegas, David Middleton. He was talking to me about it this week.
Why do we need a statistician in Vegas?
He wants to join the party.
Probably deserves one after his years of service.
Yep. Looking forward to that.
No, the Olympics has been outstanding, and the team have done a wonderful job over there.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Must be a big job.
Oh, huge job. You're broadcasting 24 hours a day pretty much for the whole length of it. But we've got a lot to talk about this morning on the show. We're going to talk about the Broncos season all but over. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Immortal, the future Immortal. Stefano Utoikamanu, he's told the Tigers that he's leaving, so we'll be chatting about that one. Val Holmes, could he be on the move? And we've got plenty of Ask Us questions and a big preview of the week's round as well. All right, who impressed you this last week in the NRL? Out of all the teams, there were a few close games, a few upsets.
Yeah, there were. I thought there was some really good footy played. I guess without being biased, the talk on everyone's lips was the Bulldogs.
Yeah, that was a great win for them.
And their big win over the Broncos, because not many people saw that coming. But yeah, there were some good performances on the weekend. Panthers again showed their class, and with the rep players back, although they lost James Fisher-Harris with a groin injury, I haven't heard just how extensive that is. Hopefully he's okay for the finals. But Panthers showed their might again on the weekend. Like, everyone's fitting well and playing at their best. They're still the team to beat. They just do it better than everyone else. They never gave the Dragons a chance on the weekend. I enjoyed the Titans-Dolphins game because the Dolphins started really strongly, but the Titans fought hard and came back. And that's good for a team that's had the sort of season that they've had, that now in the mid part of the season and getting towards the latter end, they're going to fight right to the end, which was good. I thought the Raiders were impressive against South Sydney. They ran to it's not like them. They just ran to a lead and held onto it for the rest of the night, and they showed great results. So they're another one just on the edge of that top 8 that are looking to play finals football. So they need to keep winning.
That Bulldogs win, great as well, considering who was missing. Without Stephen Crichton and going up there, Suncorp Stadium, it can be, an intimidating place to do it.
Big crowd, yeah, and particularly, we've got a largely inexperienced NRL team at the moment, and has been for most of this year. And as I say, this team was only cobbled together during the off season, so they've made giant strides right throughout the year and played extremely well. And Stephen Crichton didn't play, Josh Addo-Carr wasn't there, Max King's not playing, and Jamin Salmon. Max King and Jamin Salmon have probably played most minutes of all our players this year when they're on the field. They're sort of 80-minute players, so the coaching staff have done a great job to rotate in and around them. We've debuted a couple of players in Lipoi Hopoi and Harry Hayes has come on in the last few weeks. Young Bailey Hayward's had an outstanding debut season this year and playing in an unorthodox position. And yeah, they're all doing extremely well. It's a great team performance. When you sit there and look at it, it's not just one player. It's every player lifting every week and doing their job. And, Broncos had everything to play for. They'd had a big win the week before, pretty much at full strength. And to beat them like that was extraordinary.
Mm. What about players that stood out for you? Anyone in particular this round?
Connor Tracy. Connor Tracy. I thought he was outstanding. Yeah, he was. He really was. I think, I said 6 months ago, if he can get fit and well and play consistently well and, force his way into the fullback role, he'll change their lives. And he's certainly done that for the Bulldogs. He's been exceptionally good. Nathan Cleary. I mean, Nathan Cleary, ordinarily you just say, well, that's just a stellar performance, but it's pretty much run-of-the-mill now when he plays, isn't it? Like scoring all those points and directing the team around the way he did, he was outstanding. James Tedesco was very good, particularly in the early part of that Roosters-Manly game the other night. I thought he was terrific. Hudson Young's a player that impresses me repeatedly. I know he got dropped out of the Origin side this year, but he's an Origin class player, and I thought he was really dynamic for the Canberra Raiders on the weekend. So, yeah, they were the ones. Plenty of good performance individually. The team performances were more important, getting down to this back end of the year, and the race for the top 8. I mean, it's so close.
I know. It's great. I love it when you've got your teams that are clear up top. You know, Storm, you know, Panthers.
Yeah.
But then it feels like really could be anyone.
I don't look at the ladder much at all. You know, like when you're in clubland, you sort of don't look at it. You just concentrate on your own performance and going well, that sort of thing. But I sort of stopped to have a think at it the other night because we talk on podcasts and all that sort of thing. But it's really interesting looking at the draw over the last few weeks. All these teams that are in contention, sort of from 5th down to sort of 14th. They're all playing each other. So every win you get is 2 points the other team doesn't get either. So they're like 4-point victories every time you can beat someone else who's in contention. And some of them have got better draws than others, but they do all play each other. It's going to be very, very interesting football, and I think it'll keep everyone excited. And for these teams, the top 4 sides, I still think have got all the running, and I don't think the top 4 will change between now and the end of the year. These other sides will fight so hard to get to the finals. Getting to the finals might just be the achievement. Like they're going to wear themselves out.
So you think the top 4 is currently locked and loaded?
I think so. I can't see the top 4 changing.
So who have we got in the top 4 at the moment? We've got the
Storm,
Panthers,
Shark, and
Roosters.
Rooster.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll change.
Sharks have a good run home.
Yeah, they do. So the Sharks, let me have a look at Shark. I didn't write the Shark up because I didn't worry about it. Shark have got a good draw. They've got a good draw coming home.
So then you got the Bulldogs, Cowboys, Seagulls, Dolphins. Yep. But, you've got the same points for the Dolphins or the Raiders in 9th and the Dragons in 10th.
Manly have got Canberra away. They've got 10.5 wins, Manly. They've got 10 wins. They're 10.5 wins, so they're actually in 5th position at the moment.
Well, we were doing their game the other Sunday, and I think they were sitting in 8th at the start of the game, and we were talking about it in our pre-show, and you were saying flat out, no, they're sitting in 5th. They're sitting in 5th.
Yeah, because they've had 10.5. Well, you've got to look at the wins, not who's had buys. So they got Canberra away, then they got Warrior at home, then they got Tiger away, Bulldog away, Shark at home. So it's a pretty reasonable draw for a team that wants to play in the top 4. The Dolphins are the ones with the tough draw. They had Titan on the weekend, they lost. They play Roosters, Warriors, Bulldogs, Storm, Bronco, Knights. So that's
tough.
If they get there, they'll really earn their spot, won't they? Dragons, they play Panthers on the weekend. They now play Storm, Bulldogs, Titans, Sharks, Eels, Raiders. So they're all playing each other, aren't they? The Raiders play Manly, Bulldogs, Cowboys, Panthers, Roosters, Dragons. So they'll earn it if they get there as well. The Knights, who are probably lesser of a chance, Panthers, Tigers, Sharks, Rabbits, Titans, Dolphins. So they all play each other. The Warriors interest me a little bit because they've had 8.5 wins. They're still, so they're not that far out of it as far as Newcastle is. Eels, Dolphins, Manly, Bulldogs, Sharks. If they found their last year's form, they could win those as well. So I think 30 points will probably get you in, but Manly and Sharks with the odd point for that draw make you wonder whether or not they'll finish 29 or 31 or something like that, which could then
bump someone
out. Yeah. So they've either got to make that point work for them or it's going to work against them when we get towards the end.
So how often did you, when you were coaching and when you were playing, look at ladders?
Never. That's the first time I've ever done it.
Really?
And I wrote it. I don't really look at it. Obviously in the media you're sort of doing it, and every now and then you'd have to write a column on it when I was writing columns back in the day. But it's so boring, and you'll hear everyone interview, coaches and players. It's one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and we concentrate on just staying in the moment of what we're doing. So if you start thinking too far ahead, then you're only going to get yourself confused, or you're going to worry about things that may not happen. It's just It's just how you have to do it. So you can really only concentrate on this week's game, and to get this week's game right, you've got to concentrate on what you're doing today. You've got to concentrate on what you're doing right now. And if you're getting that right, then the wins look after themselves. But from a fan's perspective, from a fan's perspective and the media's perspective, it's going to be an exciting last 6 weeks. And I hate the fact that the ladder has buys in it, because it just confuses people. I don't know why we give people 2 points for a bye. Why do you get 2 points for having a week off? Why do they do that?
So some teams...
And some teams had 3 buys when other teams only had 1.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. So it's not quite as the ladder appears, and the draw itself, everyone plays each other. So someone goes on a good run in the next 5 or 6 weeks, we could see some surprises. If someone gets a few injuries and falters in the next 6 weeks, there's no time to make it up. Like you kind of go, once you drop out, you drop out.
Yeah, so much can change. We saw the other year when the Knights had that run towards the finals. What was it? They won their last 9 or something in a row.
Usually at this time of the year, someone makes a bit of a run, I think the teams that genuinely have premiership aspirations, obviously your Melbourne Storm and your Panthers, and then Sharks and Roosters will be hoping to do it. I think we all think Roosters have got the roster to do it, but they just keep confusing us sometimes with the way that they perform. Even on the weekend, they should have beaten Manly by 20 or 30 points. Like, they were so far in front of them, but nearly lost it. That's just typical of the Roosters. They've got to sort that out, and they can't really wait until the finals to do it. They've got to get that sort of thing sorted out now. They've still got the best for and against of any team in the competition. When they score a lot of points, they score a lot of points, and they've still got Joey Manu to come back, hopefully. So I think the winner. Well, I think Panther wins the comp. I just
can't see the Storm beating them.
No, I can't. I can't. I think if Panthers are fit and well, and this is again thinking too far ahead, but if Panthers are fit and well and at their best, I think they'll win it again. The only danger to them is the Roosters, but the Roosters haven't beaten Melbourne and Penrith for yonks. Like, they just haven't got the mentality at the moment. They've got to develop that over the last 6 weeks so that when they hit the finals, they're mentally and physically and emotionally prepared to do what's necessary. For all the other teams that are vying to make the 8, it's such a hard run walking the tightrope for this length of time, and they've all been doing it for the last 3 or 4 weeks anyway. So the last 10 weeks of the competition are walking a tightrope and having players playing injured because it's such an important game. It's going to tell. The reward will be to get in the top 8 for your fans and get you into the finals. But, it's going to be hard to see anyone from the bottom part of the 8 making a run this year. I've said repeatedly, it'll happen one day. Someone will do it.
Well, that's what records are there for.
Yeah, someone will do it. And I think someone will get to September one time and have a good run and do it. But these teams in the bottom part of the 8 have got to make such a long run of sustained pressure and walking the tightrope that it's going to be hard for them to go to another level in September to beat the likes of your Storm and Panthers and Roosters and Sharks. Sharks are interesting because, I just don't know. And with Nico Hines out at the moment, they're sort of bumbling and fumbling a little bit. They'll need him back in at full strength. I don't know that they can win it. I'm more inclined to think Panthers win. Melbourne and Roosters, the obvious danger. And Manly, if Manly could win all their games between now and the end of the year and somehow jump into that top 4 spot, then they're another side that on their day, they showed it the other night, under strength, what they did to fight back with the Roosters. And, they're a fluker's hope. But
could be a challenger come finals time.
Yeah. Cowboys interest me a little bit but they've got to show that form away from home for mine, And they've won some games this year I didn't think they could win, and they've lost some games I didn't think they could lose. They're just in that sort of position at the moment, But I think Panthers showed on the weekend, when they get it right, no one can go with them. They can't sustain the pressure. They eat it up. They actually love just grinding sides down, and then their points come pretty easily then.
Love this time of year. I love the charge to the finals. You know what else I love? Our next topic. Yes or no?
No.
Hey.
No.
That's the rule.
No. Dear.
Alrighty, Val Holmes, will he be at the Dragons next year?
fair bit of scuttlebutt around to say he will be.
Yeah. You can see him linking back up with Shane Flanagan.
Yeah, Shane's obviously looking for some players to bring in to the Dragons, and
Zach Lomax leaving.
he's got that. History with him, and Val being a great goal kicker too. I mean, Lomax has scored a lot of points for them this year. Be interesting to see what position he's considering playing him.
Well, years ago when Val was at the Sharks and they were talking about what position he was best in, it was Flano who said he's a winger.
Yeah, and he was probably the world's best winger at the time. He went off to trial in the NFL and then came back on a big deal at the Cowboys, and they justified that by saying he was going to play fullback. They played him fullback for a while, but ended up playing centres and wing. He's played both centre and wing at origin level. Very interesting. I mean, Dragons dropping Terrell Sloan on the weekend, and I'm not sure what they're thinking for the future and what the attraction would be for Val Holmes, because Val Holmes is on a pretty big contract, I think, still at the Cowboys. And what the Cowboys are thinking, I think their cap must be stretching a little bit because they've had to renew contracts with a lot of their good young forwards that are coming through. But the scuttle's too strong. The rumours are too strong. That I don't deal in rumours usually, but the tea lady just told me the Val's going to the Dragons.
Where would you play him? Where do you think they get the best out of him?
Probably centre or wing. I don't think it matters at club level. I think representative-wise, wing is his spot. At club level, he could play fullback. I mean, it's different now. Fullback's a little bit different now to when he was first trying to be a fullback. You've seen that there can be real effort players and ball runners at fullback now. We don't need them as much as playmakers as what was happening a few years ago. So I think he could make a fist of it at fullback if that's what they chose to do. And he's going to be on a contract that probably says that's a position he might have to play. I think the goal kicking's a big factor for him, losing Lomax, the Dragons. But it'll be interesting to see. I think, for me, there's too many people saying it that he's going to the Dragons for it not to be true. So I gave it a yes.
Okay. All right, next one. The Dolphins will play finals this year.
I think they will. Now, what are they on now? They're on 9 wins. Okay. I think you're going to need 12. You might get in with 11, depending on what Warriors and Manly do, but 9 wins are the ones. And we just spoke about their draw for the back end of the year. So they lost to the Titans on the weekend. They've got the Roosters at home this weekend. Then they play the Warriors away. They play the Bulldogs in Bundaberg, which is virtually a home game for them. Then they play the Storm away. They play the Broncos at home, and they play Knights away. Now, some of those games at the start of the year might have seemed more formidable than they look at the moment. And I trust Wayne Bennett. 9 wins. They've only got to win 3 of those, and they've impressed me with their work ethic in defence. I think that's been the big improvement for them this year. It's much better than it was. I know they got run down by the Titans on the weekend, but the Titans can put points on anyone, and it was there wasn't much in that game. I think Wayne Bennett will time his run, and I can see them coming up with at least 2 or 3 wins in the last little bit. Some of these other teams, when I look at their draw, and I'm kind of struggling. Some of these might win all 6, and then we really turn the season on its head. I just don't know. I mean, if they have a really good 6 weeks, you can do it, but they're actually all playing each other, so it's just who's up on the day. And I think home and away is going to become a factor. It shouldn't, but it will. But Dolphins, I'm going to say there's still a chance. I'm not prepared to write them off yet.
A big travel schedule for them. Look at some. So they've got Perth this week.
Yeah, so they're playing
Bundaberg.
Roosters in Perth. That's their home game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you'd imagine that'll be special for them. They have to get that right. Then they've got to go over to Warriors. So they go from Perth. They've got Warriors at home. Then they play Bulldogs at Bundaberg, which is just up the road. Then they play Melbourne. They play at home in Brisbane, and then they go to Newcastle. They haven't had to travel to New South Wales.
Yeah, because at the start of the season, they were barely out of Queensland.
Yeah, they've had a lovely run there.
All right, let's talk about some of the headlines. A big one, Stefano Utoikamanu, he's told the Tigers that he will not be staying at the club. And at the moment, the Storm and the Dogs seem to be the front runners. What were your thoughts on this one? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I think it was a strange one, isn't it? Because we've all sort of been scratching our heads about his contract situation at the Tigers and who would actually do a deal that give him the option to move the way it has based on team performance or if he couldn't make the Origin side, which I think there were a couple of ways that the Tigers could retain him. One, if he played in a couple of Origins this year or if they made the 8. So they're obviously mathematically out of the running for the 8. He's been able to tell them now that he's not coming. They made him quite a sizable offer to retain him. I don't think the Tigers could have done any more than they've done. They've sort of set what the media and the public see as the value of him. They've sort of set.
They were talking 800.
Yeah, they had a big 5-year deal at that sort of money. But Stefano, from what I can understand, is probably looking for a change. He's been with a struggling club for a number of years and is looking to see what life is like elsewhere in the competition, and this happens to players of all levels. He was a player that was in Brad Fittler's State of Origin, emerging squads and junior rep teams for a long time. He was always seen as an Origin player of the future. He's been in the Origin squads a couple of times. He's a big, strong boy. We spoke about him a couple of weeks ago about his recent form and that, and I can't help but think all this conjecture around his future and, you know, the Tigers and having to make that decision and then having all these other clubs chasing him, because there were a number of clubs that have actually put offers in for him. I think Dragons, Raiders, Dolphins, Storm have all spoken to him in recent times. Others have said, you know, we could move players if you wanted to consider us. I think with a player like that, you know, from my own personal perspective, when you're buying a player like that and you look like spending a significant amount of money, you kind of want the feeling that he wants, that you're his preference and he wants him to come to you before you even talk money. And that's in any discussions we've had with him and his family and his manager is kind of that. You know, we'll let him decide what he wants to do, but we haven't actually physically made an offer yet of any money. It's kind of like, well, I'd like to hear that you choose the Bulldogs to play before I would even talk about money and what that would look like. Lovely kid, lovely wife. He's got a young family. He's just bought a new house at Toongabbie. He's a very sensible young man. From what I understand, he's got an outstanding work ethic and, you know, he loves his football. He's very hard. He's 24 years of age. He's nowhere near his prime yet. Probably his apprenticeship in developing hasn't gone the way he would have liked, and it's hard when you're in a struggling side and a young side like they are. There's a lot of kids there that are NRL players of the future, no risk, that have probably been put there before their time. Difficult time for the West Tigers, and even more difficult now that one kid that they've sort of had coming through the system is going to leave them. But that's the rules in our competition. That's just how it works out. You know, I mean, it would be extraordinary if the Melbourne Storm, who are leading the competition, are able to buy the best player out of the team that's running last in the competition. That's a system I don't agree with. You know, I never have, and I don't think that's fair. But they're the rules. You can't blame Melbourne or any other top sides for doing that if they can find a player that wants to move. I don't think that system's right, but that's the system we work under. So fair game to Melbourne Storm, who I believe made an outstanding presentation to him. And we've all seen the players that have gone to Melbourne Storm over the years and improved. And there's no doubt the great coach Craig Bellamy. How long Craig is going to keep going, I guess, is one topic of conjecture there as well. But it's not an easy decision, and at the end of the day, wherever he goes and whatever he does, it's going to be up to him to make it. And from what I hear, he's got that work ethic to do that, and I think he will. Where
do you see his career sort of reaching? What heights do you see it reaching? Obviously, it's been tough being at a struggling club.
Yeah.
If he does move to another club, where do you see his career going to?
I've been doing this a long time, Danica, and I've watched a lot of young players, outstanding young kids, and, you know, they're boom kids when they're teenagers, or they burst on the scene at 19 and 20 years of age, and then I look at where they are at 28 and 29 years of age, and I look at other kids who they're late maturers and they're late starters, and they don't debut till they're 22, 23, and I look at them when they're 32, 33, and whether they're still in it. There's no rule to this as to when you should start. There's no rule to development, you know. Whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, you know, confidence-wise, there is no real rule to who or when is going to make it in the NRL. You've just got to have a level of football and a level of development for everyone, for those that want to persevere with their choice. You know, and we've seen plenty of players in recent times not debuting until they're 24, 25. So I think, I've said this many times on this podcast, I think the peak career window for a NRL playmaker these days is kind of like from 24 to 34 years of age, 25 to 35 years of age. Our chief playmakers in the game now are well over 30.
Look at Daly Cherry Evans.
All of them, you know, Ben Hunts and Sean Johnsons and Chad Townsends and, you know, Jerome Hughes. You know, they're all over that. Mitchell Moses has just had his peak in Origin. He's approaching 30. You know, like his best football is still in front of him. Yet there he was bursting on the scene as a teenager all those years ago. So I think sometimes they get too much too early. They're exposed too early. The scrutiny's too great early, and sometimes emotionally they don't handle it. And you know, others go off to England and come back. I mean, I can go through the history books and show you all the players that got there too early, but didn't have the support system or the mentality to maintain it, and then couldn't handle the setbacks and the scrutiny when it came, and found themselves trying to make comebacks at 26, 27, when it's really, that's when their career is starting. You know, and I remember vividly, you know, with a young Nathan Cleary coming through at Penrith, and every afternoon him sitting down watching videos of Jonathan Thurston and Cooper Cronk, and you'd sit there with him and say, what are you looking at? And he'd say this, this and this. I said, they weren't doing that at your age.
I remember speaking to Joey about this, and he said when he sort of hit the sort of later end of his career, he just saw the game so differently.
Differently, yeah.
He's like, it sort of slowed down and in his mind.
That's why we want to become coaches, because we don't actually, when we actually learn it, our body's gone.
Yeah.
Our body's worn out, and we've got all this knowledge, and you know, and also mentally, we the anxiety or the lack of confidence or the lack of self-belief and all that sort of thing has long since evaporated, you know, which is what holds players back too. Worrying about what the media thinks, worrying about what commentators think, worrying about what mum and dad think, worrying about, you know, what other people think. When you lose all that and you stop letting that be a focus on you, then you're in a good spot. And that's where, and they don't get that until the back end of their career. And it's funny, like it's when you've mentally got this game worked out and you've got all the knowledge, your body's struggling to keep up. Now, sports science and the way we train these days and full-time professionalism has allowed these playmakers to play well into their 30s. And some of them, they look like stopping, right? Now, back in the old days, when you got to 29 and 30, you were starting to lie about your age because they were ready to pension you off. Players just didn't play past 30 years.
It's the same in TV.
I think you're good for a while, Danica. Yeah. So keeping players in the game longer has meant that now they're taking advantage of their experience and their knowledge. Go and ask Daly Cherry Evans and Ben Hunt, or even Andrew Johns and these players, what they could go back and say to themselves at 22 years of age, or even 25 years of age. Look at the greats of our game. You go and ask Wally Lewis or Darren Lockyer or Peter Sterling, or you go and ask Andrew Johns or Brad Fittler or these sort of players, when you came into Origin, when did you really feel comfortable in that environment? When you came into first grade, when did you really feel comfortable? And they'll tell you it wasn't for years that they really felt like they were in control. And then they get to this beautiful place at the back end of their career, which a lot of our playmakers are in at the moment, whereas Andrew Johns describes, the game is easy for them. The game is so slow for them mentally and they're just able to direct their way around the field and bring other players to light. Now, with front rowers, it's a little bit the same. We used to say, you know, front rowers don't peak until they're probably 27, 28 years of age. Well, that being the case with a player like Stefano, he's still only 24. Like his apprenticeship is still there, and he's been playing with a struggling team. And has probably thought himself, I need to get in a team where I'm learning off the players I'm playing with. And that's, you know, whatever is the mentality that West Tigers is no longer for him, he's probably just unhappy with how things have unfolded for him up to this point, which is why he would consider and look at players that have gone to a club like the Melbourne Storm and performed so well. So, you know, it's his career. He can handle it any way he's like, but he's still 3 or 4 years away from getting into his prime as a front rower. And even they now are playing well into their 30s. So those key positions, which you've sort of got to get right in your roster, which is your spine, your playmakers, and then your muscle up front. And the game has been redefined a little bit with 6 agains and the speed of the game about the makeup of your forward pack. Yeah, Stefano's career really hasn't started yet.
When you were speaking before about the Melbourne Storm, you said that, you understand that they put on a big presentation, not necessarily in reference to Stefano, but when players are in a position like this and they're seeking out, working out what club they're going to go to next, what did clubs put to them as a presentation? Is it a sales pitch? What do you say to?
It's not such a sales pitch. It's there are selling points depending on the age of the player, his family status, his heritage. I mean, there are a lot of factors that we look at and that we have to cater for with players. Now, Stefano's 24 years of age. He's got 2 kids under 3 years of age and a young wife, and just bought their first home in Toongabbie. And so he's at that stage of his life. I could go and talk to another 24-year-old who's footloose, fancy free. He's got no intention of getting married and having kids whatsoever. And, I've got to keep him away from the bright lights. I mean, and, there are other players who have achieved a lot by the age of 24. There are some that people don't even know about at the age of 24. And you're looking for that diamond in the rough. You're looking for the player that's got that, there are a few things I look for when I'm recruiting players. Doesn't matter at what level. It doesn't matter if they're 15 years of age or 35 years of age. There are a couple of factors that I value very highly, and one is competitiveness in everything that they do. And the other thing is they've got to love what they do. They've got to love football. Some players don't actually love football. They do it because they're good at it, but it's not actually their love. If they're not playing, they're not watching it. They're not actually students of the game. They'll do what the coach tells them to do. They'll go to training when you give a session. But other than that, football's just a part of their life. It's not their whole life. Where for some kids, they're obsessed with this, right? Excuse me. So whenever you're talking to a prospective player who's obviously of NRL talent, now if you're talking to young players who are yet to debut or young fellas that have sort of been in and out and can't find their feet, you'll be talking about what we can do for them. And it's not so much what they can do for us, it's what we can do for them to help them reach the levels that they desire. Some of them that you talk to have never considered getting to those levels. They've kind of haven't got that ambition, but you'll find that out in the interview process. You'll find out over time whether or not they actually do love what they do, whether they are students of the game, whether they do actually have ambition, whether they do actually believe in themselves, and these are all little boxes that you'll tick or cross as you go through the interview process. And until you actually sit down and talk to them, you don't know. And then you look at their family environment, particularly for young kids. We'll go and talk to their schools. We'll go and talk to their parents. We'll go and talk to coaches that have coached them at junior levels. We'll go and talk to players that have played with them. It's a fairly extensive process if you do it properly to screen all the ones that you want. And, the team that we've recruited this year at the Bulldogs was built purely on those couple of qualities, that they were extremely competitive. They loved what they did. They were prepared to work hard and they had ambition. They wanted to be better than what they were, or they wanted to get past the level they were currently at, and they had the potential to do it. And, they're always the triggers for me. That's the guide for me. They're the two things I look at. Talent's talent, and if they're NRL, they're all talented.
But you've got to have
every position
the drive, the ambition you want.
Yeah, all our positions are different shapes and sizes. We have different shapes and sizes for wingers and centres, and different shapes and sizes for fullbacks. And nowadays we're having different shapes and sizes for front rowers. I mean, there are teams that have got small forward packs and some that are much bigger. And the jury's out on whether or not the rules are making it easier for the bigger man. And then you've got to think about rotation. How many minutes can they play? How long can they maintain that? And if you're going to go out and pay big money for a forward and he can only play 50 minutes a game because that's where he's best served, you've got to pay someone to play the other 30 minutes.
Yeah, so then you're wanting to pay them a little bit less, or if they can play bigger minutes.
And if he's only a 40-minute player, well, it's really double the cost. So if you're going to pay a fella $500,000 and he only plays 40 minutes a week, I've got to find another bloke to play the other 40 minutes for him. Who's that going to be, and what are we going to pay them? So that spot becomes $1 million spot, to get that job done over 80 minutes. And every week you've got to pick 2 front rowers, and in the course of you need 160 minutes of front rower football. Some teams, 5 or 6 players contribute to that. Other teams, like a Payne Haas or a Regan Campbell-Gillard, can go for 70 minutes and and they could go 80 minutes if they had to, and that's a huge asset.
That's a huge asset as well now too with, HIAs and stuff. You need to have that
Absolutely.
security.
You need versatility in your side to cover positions. Forwards who can play in the back lines is extremely important. We've seen how hard it is to cover outside backs, and particularly wing positions. They're not the sort of things you keep on the bench, but if you've got a centre can play on a wing and a back rower can play in the centres, well, at least you can cover that for that afternoon. Look at Manly last week. They had forwards playing virtually in all the outside back positions once the injuries took. And, you only get so many players in your roster. This is such an intricate subject. And I don't want to rush through it because it doesn't sound like I know what I'm talking about. But even in your roster of your top 30 players, how many do you keep in each position, and how many experienced players can you afford, and how many players at the back end of your roster are inexperienced or young, or you're just having to pay them that money to keep them in the club, because if I didn't pay them that money, they would leave, but they're not really ready for first grade yet. So if we get to player number 24, 25, and my last 5 players are development players, are kids that, they're not ready for first grade yet, I've got to look for an experienced player outside of that, to bring into the squad rather than rush them and, restrict their career. So there's a whole juggling act in the makeup of your roster and your top 30 and how much you pay players. And
it's a very intricate puzzle.
It is. It is. I mean, over in America where they've had salary caps for years in the professional game, there are companies that actually run salary caps for them, and they go through the whole draft, what players are worth, and and how many of each position they're going to keep. We don't have that flexibility in the NRL. Our whole salary cap and development program is flawed. There hasn't been enough thought put into that. And I've been saying that for years and years and years, but no one really wants to stop and take the time to do it. It's, the people that have been involved in this certainly haven't been the ones that develop footballers and haven't been the ones that put rosters together. This is the wrong people have put the whole program together, and it's flawed. And if we want 20 teams down the track and 18 teams in a couple of years' time, we want to keep developing NRL talent, then our pathway systems are still too restrictive, money and development-wise, to make that happen when it needs to happen. Every individual club feels that. But unfortunately, when they devise these systems between the RLPA and the NRL, none of the people who make these decisions have actually had to develop a club or develop people within a club. And it's very, very difficult. And that's why a few injuries in a club, some clubs can cope, others can't cope. That's just how your salary cap is. How did we get onto all this?
I can't even remember. Let's move on.
Where did we start?
We started with Stefano and whether he was going to your doggies or not. And
That's not what you asked. That's not what you asked.
Now I'm being the journo.
Now you're being the journo.
All right, let's talk about the Broncos. Is their season all but over?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a disappointing season for them. And I guess in review, they will have to look at the impact of last year's grand final loss, where they in fact had that game won. Everyone seemingly thought they had that won. It was snatched away from them from the end. At the start of last year, they weren't considered grand finalists, but they got through. There was a magical time. They got beaten. What effect has that had on their off-season and their preparation for this year? They were one of the teams that went to Las Vegas. We're still all watching, very interesting, to see how those Vegas teams have come up, because I think by the mid part of the season, Broncos, South, Manly and Roosters, it could be said, were all underperforming on where expectation was.
Do you reckon one trip has that much impact on
Well, that's what we're asking.
Season?
That's what we're asking. That's what we're asking. But, they sort of started a fortnight before everybody else, and, it was kind of like something different. It's just something different in your preparation. Years and years ago, when teams travelled over to play in the World Club Challenge in England at the start of the year, sometimes that had an effect on the first half of the season. It's just when you're getting ready, your players ready, and I guess the Las Vegas thing was a big thing. But, Roosters look like they've come out of the back end of it, but Roosters have got an extraordinary roster. South Sydney were not expected to be back at the tail of the field midway through the competition.
Manly,
have sort of been up and down. They haven't been right there, but they've found their way back into it, the running now, which is good. But certainly earlier in the year, I think, in the first half of the season, they probably wouldn't have been where we would have expected them. So that's one little factor. It's not the factor. It's one little factor that they've got to look at. They did lose experienced players. I mean, Farnsworth and Flegler and Capewell, who went off to the Warriors, who were a big part of their grand final push last season. Then you lose an Adam Reynolds during the course of the season, and they've lost Reece Walsh a couple of times. And they've obviously had some issues with some of their other younger players too, who, again, get there early, perform at a great level, get given too much too early, a lot of media attention, a lot of scrutiny, one-team town, Brisbane Broncos, and put up on a pedestal, and whether or not that's been handled well. So, but, there's no getting away from the fact that the Broncos are not where we expected them to be at this stage of the year, and kind of like, all right, Origin's over, now we'll get our act together and we'll come good. And they did. They beat Newcastle and everything's going to be all right. And then they faltered on the weekend and the Bulldogs put it all over them. But it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from that this week. I think they're too far back now. There are too many teams between them and the 8th spot. I just don't know that they can...
Can't see them playing finals footy.
Well, it's going to be a hard job. I'm not saying it won't, but I think that
they're up against it.
Maybe that ship has sailed.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Immortals, because the NRL announced a few weeks ago that they're going to be naming the Next Immortal in a special ceremony. Who do you think is the front runner? There's been a few names thrown out there. Freddie's Brad Fittler. His name got thrown out. Cameron Smith.
It's interesting. The Immortal. I was actually on the committee last time we inducted Immortals. I think it was, and we went back retrospectively and put in 3 pre-war nominees. When the Immortals was first started, it was started by I think by Rugby League Week. It was a Rugby League Week promotion. And they didn't consider at that time pre-war people. I think their first ones were like sort of Johnny Raper around that era, Bob Fulton. So there were sort of players we felt had been overlooked retrospectively, and that if people who at Rugby League Week came up with the Immortals concept, which was adopted by the Rugby League ended up taking the Immortals concept. Had they had their time over again, they'd have probably given recognition to the pre-war ones that we did. So we were given the job of putting 2 new people into the Hall of Fame. We put 5 in. We put the pre-war ones in, and then we selected 2 more post-war, which I think was Norm Provan, and was the other one Mal? So I think they were the ones we put in, and I think it was really well received. So I still think there are some players from the more distant past that still deserve that recognition over the passage of time.
So back to what the 80s?
I still think Ron Coote needs to be recognised in that realm. And Ron's not getting any younger. Love to be able to do it while he's still with us. And he's very much with us. I'm not saying he's about to pass away. For me, if I was involved, I'd be looking at people like Ron Coote, and probably the next one would be sort of someone like Peter Sterling from the 80s. There's always, because they're in their most recent memory, the Cameron Smiths and the Cooper Cronks and the Billy Slaters and the Darren Lockyers and the Brad Fittlers, all, I think Andrew Johns got there too early, but Andrew Johns was extraordinary. But I think they would appreciate it later in life. I think... it's funny, I haven't actually spoken to Andrew about it. Obviously, it's a great rap, and he was always going to be an Immortal, but I felt like this is something that you're giving to people that have been out of the game for some time to remember them and recognise their contribution to the game, and which is why we went back pre-war and recognised those people who weren't around, obviously, but their families were. And that's why I think Ron Coote should be recognised in this one. It's why we went with Norm Provan the previous time. I think Peter Sterling, and that was my era where I played and coached during that era, and Peter Sterling was a prominent, dominant player within the game at that time for New South Wales. He had a mate there, Brett Kenny, who was they were a great partnership, but Peter Sterling was kind of on a different level. Brett Kenny was a brilliant individual player, but and I'm not saying that he won't one day get that sort of recognition. Some players will fall into the Immortal category, and a lot of them will fall into the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of players that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame and have their feats recognised over a long period of time. The Immortal is kind of like Like, I think Ron Coote is an immortal name. I think Peter Sterling is an immortal name. I think that's one that'll be transcended. I think as time goes on, your Brad Fittler and your Darren Lockyer are immortal names in the game of rugby league. I think Laurie Daly is an immortal name in the game of rugby league. This is from my eras where I played and coached. And then in another 10 or 15, 20 years, your Cameron Smiths and your Thurstons and those fellas, because then we can go back and relive them, and their kids have grown up, and their families have grown up, and they've sort of appreciated. I think they'll appreciate it later on.
Yeah, so go back to...
Where if they got it now, it's just another award.
Yeah.
It's just another accolade.
Yeah.
And I don't think they would get the sense of what it actually means. And I think we need to immortalise a number of the games that we've had in our game throughout the years. Like the other part of that is, and we've said this will only be for players, but where do you put a person like Wayne Bennett in the game? If he's not an immortal of the game, or his name won't be immortalised in the game, then nobody else will. Like, it's just... But he doesn't fit into that player category, so he goes into a Hall of Fame category, obviously. And your Jack Gibsons and those sorts of people, they go into that Hall of Fame type level. So if you're going to immortalise players' names, think about the ones who were the feature acts of the day. And Ron Coote was certainly one of those. Peter Sterling was certainly one of those. And I think they need to go back and recognise that. And I think that the obvious choices now, which are your Cameron Smiths and your Thurstons and those sort of players, I don't think it hurts to wait a while. They're going to be, they will be, but let's give it a bit of breathing space and give it a little bit of time so that they really appreciate and their families really appreciate. And, it's just a personal thing with me. That's just how I view it. For me, if it was my decision, it'd be Ron Coote and Peter Sterling. All the other names you mentioned all deserve it, and they will get it in time.
But later on.
I don't think it needs to be done right now. So, I want to celebrate everything we've got now in the last 20 years, but I want to still go back and remember those great players of the past, and in 15 years' time, I won't be here, you'll be here, but...
15, you'll still be here, Gus.
we can immortalise... I don't think
we'll still be doing Friday night footy.
We can immortalise, your Thurstons, and they're going to be immortals. There's no risk about it, because they were the dominant names of their time, and achieved extraordinary things in the game. But it's kind of just another award for them at the moment. I'd rather recognise there are still some that need to be recognised from the past. People will disagree. I say, no, get on with it. Younger people won't even know what I'm talking about.
It'd be great to see Sterlo.
Yeah, I think they deserve it.
Yeah.
I do think they deserve it. I think he might have won 4 or 5 men of the matches in Origins around the time. That was at the time of Wally Lewis, who was winning pretty much every week, 2 out of every 3, so... he had a great career, Sterlo, and then his contribution to the game, obviously, in the media after that. But back in the day, there was no more respected player or high-profile player. And Ron Coote was in the area where I fell in love with the game. I remember I was shattered because Ron Coote took over from Johnny Raper in the Australian side. Like, Johnny Raper was my hero. He was one of the first immortals, but they moved Johnny Raper to the second row to accommodate this lock forward called Ron Coote, who played an extraordinary number of grand finals, and he's a great player and a great man, and I think he needs to be recognised.
Well said. All right, let's do some 6 tackles trivia. All right, Kieran Foran's field goal on the weekend was the second of his career.
It was a floppy-looking field goal.
Which team was he playing for when he kicked his first?
So he's only kicked 2?
Yes.
In his whole career?
In his whole career.
Kieran
Foran, yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. I suppose he's not much known as a kicker, is he?
It was interesting. We asked him after the game. We said, how did it sort of come about? And he said they were sort of planning it for maybe a minute or 2 leading in, and then he said it was just all
it was
so
on
quick.
It was on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
They'd got 6 in front, and he thought 7 sounds really good.
Yeah.
And it was he nearly hit it with his shin.
Yeah.
It wasn't the most.
He said
perfect.
It wasn't the best planned out situation.
It wasn't the most perfect of drop kicks, and I guess coming through, he had a great partnership with Daly Cherry Evans at Manly, and Daly Cherry Evans is one of the great field goal kickers in the competition under all sorts of pressure. So I can't imagine him ever really needing to kick a field goal at Manly. He went off to Parramatta. I don't know if he played enough games at Parramatta to even get in position for a field goal. He had injuries there at Parramatta. where'd he go? I'm kind of thinking it might be Bulldogs.
It was.
Was it?
2018
Was it?
Bulldogs, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where he would actually be called upon to kick one.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it when you've got DCE there beside
No,
you.
no, you couldn't get the ball. You wouldn't want it either.
Yeah, so 2018 for the Bulldogs.
But it was an important one on the weekend. They were good, the Titans. You know, I saw Des giving a bit of a rollicking at half time on the cameras, and he wasn't too happy with the way things are going. But I think he did it because he felt like they were in the game. He felt like Dolphins were there to be beaten, and he knew that if they could get a run of possession, they could score some points, and they did. A couple of them iffy-looking tries, but they get them. They got very, very fast people out wide, and they were very, very good. I think they held Dolphins to 0 in the second half, didn't they?
So because it was 16-0 in the first half for the Dolphins, the majority of it. And
14, I think.
14.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
it's 14-6 at half time.
14-6 at half time.
They got a player sent to the sin bin.
Yes,
They
and
scored.
then you just felt like that changed just at the back end of that first half.
Yeah. So you don't want to waste your rollicking as a coach. You don't want to get up and make a fool of yourself.
He was fired up, Des.
He was fired up. He was pumped. But I said he feels like I can win.
Yeah.
If he's going to do that, he feels like he can make a difference.
Because you always say you've only got a few of those
You don't get many of
year,
them. No.
per year, so you got to pick your time
They
wisely.
lose their impact pretty quickly.
Yeah. I wonder how many that's been for him this year.
It's like if you yell all the time and suddenly you talk softly.
Yeah.
People will listen.
What's your go-to?
I haven't got a go-to anymore.
How many times do you reckon in a season was the maximum that you ever unloaded?
Look, honestly, you try to limit it to one if you had to. But, frustration gets the better. When you're younger, you don't learn that. But as you get older, and in the end, you realise it's a waste of time anyway. So,
do you have one that you remember?
I can't. Can you ever remember Wayne Bennett doing that at halftime of any team? I can't ever remember anyone saying that Wayne Bennett got up us at halftime. I can't ever remember that.
No, you think
He'd
about
be very measured.
on the cameras that we see. You think about the ones that can get quite animated. Bellamy, Des, Ricky sometimes.
Yeah. Ricky sometimes.
Sometimes.
All the time, Ricky.
Do you have a halftime spray that you remember giving?
Oh, no. I'm not going to go there. Not going to go there. The most, I think the most animated I ever was the 1991 grand final. We played Canberra the week before. It was us and Canberra, and they beat us the year before, and they led us 12-6 at half time. And we came in the next year, and the score was exactly the same, 12-6. And we'd done it. They hadn't done it to us. We'd done it to ourselves. And that was a fairly animated halftime, yeah.
Do you go into halftime knowing what you're going to say?
You got to stop and think. If you just rush in, I've always had this thought that you've got to tell them what they need to hear, not what you want to say. It's the one bit of advice I give to all young coaches. And, don't talk out of frustration, and don't talk out of, don't let your frustrations dictate the message. You need to understand what they need to hear, not what you want to say. There are plenty of things you might want to say, but is that actually going to help at the moment? Is it actually going to help the player there? And sometimes, it's either a kick up the backside or you put your arm around them. And you don't really want to give them a kick up the backside, but that's what they need. You don't really want to put your arm around them because you're furious, but that's actually what they need. So and I think that's a learned skill over a period of time that the really great coaches have, is to know where and when and the right thing to say, or sometimes not to say anything.
I reckon that would be, you'd get a reaction from that.
Not to say anything.
Imagine the coach just coming in at halftime just not saying anything at all.
Not to say anything.
Have you ever done that, where you've walked in and just...
Yeah.
You could, hear a penny drop in the dressing sheds?
Walked in, got a drink and walked out.
Oh, that would rattle me.
There was one day, one of my funniest ones, we come in at half time, I think we were leading, 32-0 or something. I was having a big day, or 32-0. And I come in, what did I say? I said, beautiful boys, well done, that's the way to do it. Okay, get the beers, okay, team song, let's go, blah, 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 blah. And they're all sort of looking at me. I said, what? I said, come on, team song, get the beers out. no, it's not over yet. I said, I know that, just saying that you do. And I walked out.
Do you remember what happened in the second half?
64-0.
Oh, there you go. All right, let's have a look at some of the matches from the upcoming week that we've got. I'm going to get your tips on some of the NRLW matches. Also, too, we've got a NRL.
Oh, a good round, the NRLW
Yeah.
matches. I saw a few of the games on the weekend.
There's also a podcast that we do for NRL Online, NRLW Weekly, and that one's thanks
That's
to Light and Easy.
Marley and the girls,
Marley and
aren't
Roo.
Yeah.
Yep. So tune into that one if you want to get some of your
They're very knowledgeable, the girls.
very smart. All right, who are we tipping? So we've got Raiders Knights. That one's Saturday at 11 a.m. in
This
Canberra.
is NRLW.
NRLW, yep.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Knights in that one.
Ooh, the Knights, enough set at home. All right, Titans Tigers, Seabus Super Stadium.
I'll go with the home side.
Okay,
in that
Titans.
Yep.
Sunday afternoon, Eels Sharks at Allianz Stadium.
The Eels were terrific on the weekend. They really were. Actually, I saw both those games. I commentated on the Eels Bronco game.
Quite physical, that one.
Yeah, and I was out at Shark Park to watch the Sharks play the Cowboys. And it was cold and wet and damp and windy, and the Sharks won 14-0. Second half was scoreless. And then we had the game from Brisbane, which is in beautiful sunshine and up there with the Eels. And the Eels were terrific. That was a big upset, and they did it really well. They were terrible last year, the Eels. They ran last, but they've obviously recruited well and worked very hard during the off-season. So that'll be, and that's out at Allianz Stadium. I'll go with Shark.
Oh, Shark. Okay. Sunday
Everything
afternoon.
I say surprises you, doesn't it?
I would have gone Eel on that one.
Do you?
Let's see.
Okay.
We'll see on Sunday. I'll text you seeing who wins.
Well, this time you tip first. Right? Roosters or Broncos?
Ooh, I'm going to go Roosters.
Okay.
Who are you going to go?
I'll go Broncos to bounce back.
Okay. And then Sunday afternoon, Sunday night actually, 6:10 p.m. up at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, Cowboys and Dragons.
Cowboys impressed me on the weekend. I know they were beaten 14-0 by the Sharks, but they didn't have a lot of luck, and they had some really good, strong ball runners. And I think back to Townsville, they just might be able to get the Dragons. So, it'll take a while for me to learn all the form in the women's games, but that's what I saw out of round one. So
Okay.
I'll go with those ones.
All right, lock them in. All right, NRL action. Thursday night, Tigers and Cowboys at Leichhardt Oval.
I'm calling that one at Leichhardt Oval. Yeah, Cowboys, too much to play for. They got beaten by 60 there last year. Was it last year or the year before?
I think that was last year.
And then Tigers went to Townsville and got beat by 70.
Yeah, they've had some. Those two teams up against each other. They've had some weird ones.
You got to be careful of the hoodoo.
Yeah, the Hoodoos. Be wary.
You just never know.
Warriors Eels at Go Media Stadium in Auckland. That'll be another packed out stadium.
Congratulations to the Warriors. I mean, I think they're going to be the first team in history to have sellout crowds at their home ground
the entire
every
season.
club season.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
They honestly, rugby league in New Zealand, especially around Auckland, we were over there last year when they made the finals. JT and I did a shoot over there, and we were walking around the streets, and everyone was just coming up to JT, yelling up the wahs.
Yeah.
For a rugby union
They deserve
country.
it. They deserve it. I had the great pleasure of working for a short time with the Warriors, and it was during COVID, so obviously we couldn't contribute as much as we wanted. And most of my time was driving to Wyong or driving to Tamworth
yeah,
to watch them in camp.
yeah.
I'd go up there and spend a few days with them and come back, and seeing what they're getting a first-hand look at what they and their families went through to be here in Australia, and not only their families but their extended families.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them were having kids while they were here, and their
I know.
grandparents are still back in New Zealand, and the great sense of relief that they got when they could finally return home and lead a normal life. And we saw their extraordinary job last year. It probably hasn't gone as well this year for them, although they've had a few injuries, and I still think they're not out of it completely with 8.5 wins at the moment. But the support for them over there, extraordinary. It's wonderful for the game. And we need, not right now, but I think that's one of the expansion things that we need. We need a game in Auckland every weekend.
Yeah.
So we need two teams. We need a rivalry over there.
Would you go South Island for the other team? Or would
Personally, no, I'd put it in Auckland.
Yeah, right, okay. So two Auckland-based teams.
I still think we need another Brisbane team.
Yeah.
But there's not enough teams in Brisbane. Like when there was one team in Brisbane, I kept saying we needed two, now we needed three, now we needed four. that's the market. That's where the people are. It's I just I don't know enough. I don't only know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know enough about the South Island to think that the sustainability is there over a long period of time, where I would be really confident that Auckland could accommodate it and that we need. And I mean, New Zealand's not a big place. I think that.
Or somewhere that just outside of Auckland, like a Hamilton or something.
No. Auckland.
Right in Auckland.
Auckland.
Okay, there you go.
Auckland. You've been there.
I've been there a few times.
It's a lovely place.
Beautiful.
Yeah. They could sell that out every weekend.
Yeah.
Sell it out every weekend.
Well, they have been.
And I think if there is to be another franchise in England, it's probably the Auckland Rugby League, the governing body there, who were the original entries into the competition many years ago. Was Auckland Rugby League. I think it was the Auckland Warriors that came into the competition. I don't know, but certainly in time, there's a real opportunity for the game to get even bigger in New Zealand. There's a wonderful opportunity there at the moment, and they need to invest in it, and hopefully they are. I know they are. That's just good. But in time, I can see 2 Auckland teams.
But there's also such a big base as well. Like if you junior rugby league and stuff, if you get more junior rugby league over there,
that's where your players are going to come from.
Yeah. Because there's so many young kids who, and rugby unions.
You provide a pathway over there for kids in school, because up until recently, you leave school at 18 years of age over in New Zealand, there was no rugby league pathway for you. You either went and played in the park in the men, you can imagine what that would be like as an 18-year-old kid, or you came to Australia, right, which a lot of people did. They all come to Australia to try and get in the system over here, or they went to rugby, where there was more opportunity for them. But, only so many can be All Blacks, and only so many can play in the Super, what is it now, Super 15 or something?
Yeah.
Well, how many do they have now?
Yeah.
It's dwindling down. Do you a rugby person? Do you watch rugby?
I actually went to a rugby school, so I grew up watching rugby, but rugby league's where it's at. That's where it is.
So you learned the error of your ways.
Yes. Couldn't help what school I was sent to. All right, this one I'm looking forward to. We're heading over to Perth for this one. Dolphins, Roosters.
You got another trip?
Another trip, yeah. We're going to... It's a work trip.
So Vegas was a work trip?
Vegas was a work trip.
That's not what I heard.
New Zealand was a work trip. Oh, that's all we do is
You're
work.
in Brisbane every second week?
I know. Yeah, we're up there.
Your frequent flyer miles must be...
They're big days when you fly in and out on game day. We were delayed a little bit.
Planes, trains and automobiles. Hotels. Yeah. Do you like staying in hotels?
Nah.
No, I can't.
I love my own bed.
I can't sleep in a hotel.
I know. I remember when we were up in Townsville for, was it Women's Origin? And we were on the plane leaving the next day, and I think it was like a 10:20 plane or something, and they were paging a few people's names over the loudspeaker on the plane. A couple of young Channel 9 people may have missed their flight because they went to the Mad Cow, and they were also saying your name.
It's an occupational hazard.
And I turned to our one of our production managers next to us, and they said, no, Gus got on the 6 a.m. flight out of here.
I get the first flight out everywhere I go.
I know, that's wild.
The first flight.
We finished. We get back to the team hotel. Well, our hotel's at what, 10? No, later than that, 11 o'clock at night, and you get on the 6 o'clock flight out.
Well, I don't sleep, so I just get up and go to the airport. You've got no idea. Last time I was in Brisbane, was that the Origin night? I had to come back on the Thursday, and the amount of people at the airport at 4:30 in the morning.
Really?
Incredible. The traffic getting to the airport and the people in the airport and the queues to get through the security at 4:30 in the morning.
Really?
Be careful in Perth too.
Why?
Right? Because I got on the early flight in Perth when I came on. We did a game over there. We must have done Origin or something across over there. And I got off to get on the first flight to home in the morning. So I got out there early, But you've got all the fly in, fly out miners and workers and all that sort of thing. And the airport was chock-a-block. So I got there at 4:30. And they had to call my name and bring me through the security. It was an hour and a half getting through the security.
Wow.
Airport's in the morning at 6 a.m.
Yeah, right. See, I'm an 8 a.m. flyer. It's a nice little time. You get there at 7, maybe 7.
I'm up and gone. I'm home by then.
Yeah, right.
Danica?
6 a.m. I don't know how you do it.
Do you go out drinking with them after the game?
Not if we're doing a regular game. After Origin. If there's a celebration to be had after the Blues win.
If I could tell some stories about the old days.
You can if you want.
The old days.
Maybe we'll do that next week on next week's
I walked from
podcast.
the Mad Cow. I was staying at, where the casino is there at Townsville
Yeah,
on the point. I walked from the Mad Cow to the casino at like 4 in the morning or something. In a monsoon. In an absolute monsoon. I didn't care. Absolute monsoon. I was getting blown from one side of the street to the other, and it was absolutely teeming with rain. Absolutely teeming with rain. Went upstairs, changed my clothes, went to the airport.
Straight from the Mad Cow to the
Straight to the Mad Cow.
to the airport.
They were the good old days.
Who was what were you up?
We had some star performers. Who?
Yeah.
You get too old for all that, Danny. You can't do it anymore.
I remember Freddie used to always tell us that the first thing he'd pack when he'd have a game in Townsville, the going out shoes.
Yeah. Well, when I was coaching and I had some wild boys at the Roosters, if we ever had to go to Townsville, all I would say to them is, no win, no Mad Cow. I didn't have to say anything else.
So he's told us that they were down. I can't remember what year it would have been, but they were down, and he got everyone in behind the goalposts after the Cowboys had scored a try, and he's like, "Listen, guys, if we don't win this, we can't go to the Mad Cow."
He's serious. He won't let you go.
Yeah, they won. All right, so
they were great days, and but like back in the old days, when I first started here at Channel 9, like we did the Sunday Footy show, and they put us in a helicopter to take us to Newcastle. Fascinating times, fascinating times back in the old days, and if we had a trip to Melbourne or to, that was, she was straight from wherever we were to the airport. I've always got the first flight out, always.
So I love it how some people in the Channel 9 commentary team, they will never miss a flight, no matter how late they are out the night before.
No, you got to get it. So I really haven't drunk alcohol much since about 2004, 2005. Maybe twice a year I might have a drink, but. It was another life back then.
The old teapots. Did you have the teapots at the Mad Cow?
What's a teapot?
The teapots where they put the shots in the teapot, and you walk around drinking out of the teapot. So I've heard.
No. So you've heard. You actually demonstrated that too well to say I've heard. No.
All right, Dolphins, Roosters. Who are you tipping?
Tipping Rooster.
Titans, Broncos, another Queensland derby.
Yeah, I'm going to tip
Titans. Storm, Dragons.
Storm.
That one's in Melbourne. Storm, too strong. Sharks, Rabbitohs.
Sharks.
Shark Park on Saturday night. And then Sunday, Panthers, Knights.
Panther.
And then I think this one's actually the one that I'm looking forward to most. Belmore. Bulldogs,
sold out.
Raiders.
Sold out weeks ago.
Sold out, and I think you're even trying to get some more people in because we're going to move the Channel 9 studio to allow...
Trying to find everywhere to seat people.
Yeah, to allow more people to get in.
I don't know how they're going to do it. Belmore, there's nowhere to park, there's nowhere to sit, there's nowhere to eat.
So
but they just pack them in.
What's capacity?
I think it'll be about 17,000 there.
Yeah.
Which will be... There'll be chock-a-block. There'll be no room for anything.
We were talking about...
But the streets around Belmore, I mean, up in Burwood Road, up there near the coffee shops and all that, and around the Leeds Club and everything, it's fascinating. When they have a home game at Belmore, just how well it's supported.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, we've had some huge crowds at Acor this year as well, but, Bulldogs having a good season and fans that come out in force.
Andrew Johns was saying he might even catch the train out.
To Belmore?
To Belmore,
yeah. Walk down the hill.
Yeah, because parking's going to be a nightmare. But this is going to be a good game. Yeah. Bulldogs, Raiders.
Well, it's one of these games that's got a big bearing on the top 8, doesn't it? So Raiders were very good the other day, so it's going to be a tough one. They beat the Bulldogs in Magic Round this year.
Yeah, that's right. It was
a close game, 24-20 or something like that. But,
yeah.
There's not much between them.
Are we looking to have any star power back this week for the Bulldogs?
Don't think so. Probably too early in the week to say. It was really good performance last week because a lot of our blokes had the flu last week, and actually they had no training yesterday, and they've only got half a squad there today. I was over there this morning, and they've sent half of them home. So flu's sort of ravaged them. But a lot of sides will be the same. Right at this time of year, there's a very bad flu going around, and you don't want it to spread to other players, and you don't want them training while they've got it. Thankfully, it seems to be only a 3 or 4 day thing, so hopefully they're feeling a bit better by the weekend. But, there's plenty of it around at the moment. And it was a really good performance on the weekend because they had players missing and they had a number of players that were affected by the flu. I can only imagine probably Broncos had some too. So, but, it's the things you don't see sometimes that make the difference.
All right, well, big weekend of footy coming up. And once again, Gus, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you.
I'll be back again next week.
Trying to stay awake after a night of Olympics.
Well, there's plenty more Olympic action coming up too. So
get the first plane home from Perth, Danica.
All right.
Don't be hanging around with the party goers, all right?
Good advice.
First plane home.
Thanks for joining us on Six Tackles with Gus, and we'll see you again next week.